Right now, the punishing heat that has gripped the Northeast for the better part of a month is finally easing, with cooler, less humid air settling in from Boston to Washington, and to forecasters confirming the region's latest heat surge has run its course. That is the relief every local newscast is leading with today. Here is what almost none of them are explaining clearly enough. The air moving in behind that heat is not simply clean and cool. It is still carrying the smoke of more than 900 active wildfires burning. Across Canada, a plume so dense that at least 10 major metro areas from Minnesota to Washington, D.C. recorded their highest 24-hour air quality readings since 1999 earlier this month. And forecasters say more of it is already on the way back. At the same time, the Storm Prediction Center is now watching a fresh corridor of severe thunderstorm potential build across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. For this coming Sunday and Monday, the same region already under an extended air quality alert for renewed smoke, with heat itself forecast to return to parts of the Midwest within days of that storm system passing through. If you have felt the sky where you live clear, haze over and clear again more than once this month, here's what is genuinely worrying the meteorologists and health officials tracking this pattern. The heatwave ending is not the story. What keeps cycling back in behind it, smoke, storms, and then heat again, is. This is the story of what is actually replacing this heat. Wave in the Northeast, why officials are treating the smoke behind it as more than a visual nuisance, and why the same pattern that just delivered the worst air quality some of these cities have measured in over 2 decades shows no sign of being finished. No exaggeration, just what the National Weather Service, the Storm Prediction Center, and the National Interagency Fire Center are actually reporting right now. Drop a comment and tell me how many separate rounds of smoke or haze you have noticed where you live this month, because if you have lost count, you are living through exactly the pattern this video explains. I read every one of these. If you want grounded weather coverage instead of recycled panic, subscribe, it is free, and a like helps this reach people before the next round of this pattern reaches them. Let us go for 5,000 likes on this one. Now let us get into it. To understand why fading heat does not automatically mean cleaner air, you first need to understand how wildfire smoke actually behaves once it leaves the fire itself. Smoke plumes rise into the upper atmosphere and travel enormous distances, riding the same upper-level winds that steer Weather System S across the continent, carrying brown and black carbon, the fine particulate matter known as PM2.5, sometimes thousands of miles from the fire that produced it. Most of the time, that smoke stays high enough in the atmosphere to simply dim the sun and tint the sky, a hazy nuisance rather than a health hazard. The danger escalates specifically when atmospheric conditions mix that smoke down to ground level, which is exactly what has been happening repeatedly this July, as the same ridge of high pressure responsible for this month's heat has also acted like a lid, trapping smoke near the surface rather than letting it disperse aloft. That is the specific mechanical reason heat domes and smoke events have kept arriving together this summer rather than as 2 separate, unrelated stories. And it is also why the smoke has not simply cleared for good every time a cold front finally pushed the heat out. The front clears the air locally for a day or two. It does nothing to the source, hundreds of fires still actively burning across Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Quebec, which means the next shift in prevailing winds can send a fresh plume right back into the same cities that had just started breathing easier. The scale of what has actually been moving through the Midwest and Northeast this month is genuinely significant. Not simply a bad air day here and there. Smoke first poured south out of Canada and northeastern Minnesota on July 15th, driven by more than 800 active Canadian wildfires concentrated from the Northwest Territories through northern Saskatchewan, northern Manitoba, western Ontario, and into northern Quebec and Labrador, forcing a temporary closure of the Boundary Waters Canoe area and a peacetime emergency declaration from Minnesota's governor as fires that had been smoldering there since May flared up again. Within days, more than 124 million Americans were under air quality alerts, with at least 10 metro areas recording their highest 24-hour averaged air quality index readings from smoke pollution since 1999. And Minnesota's own pollution control agency confirmed the state's smoke pollution had reached its highest level since 2014. Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Washington, D.C. all ranked among the world's most polluted major cities on certain mornings during this stretch, according to real-time monitoring from IQ Air, with air quality index readings climbing well past the 200 mark, deep into the range officially classified as very unhealthy to hazardous. Nationally, the National Interagency Fire Center has tallied more than 40,000 wildfires burning in the United States alone so far this year, consuming close to 3.8 million acres, adding to the same cross-border smoke burden coming down from Canada. Here is where this story moves from a rough couple of weeks into something officials are genuinely worried about, because the pattern has not behaved the way a single smoke event normally would. Air quality improved meaningfully across the Northeast in the days after the first wave, as a stretch of storms and a shift in prevailing winds pushed the worst of the haze back over the Midwest. But National Weather Service forecasters were explicit at the time that periodic smoke episodes were expected to continue as long as the underlying Canadian fires stayed active. And that is precisely what has happened, with additional plumes pivoting back through the Northeast on more than one occasion since. As this current heat surge finally breaks, the same setup is developing again. An air quality alert issued for Wisconsin over renewed Canadian smoke was still active as of this week, with meteorologists indicating it could be extended further into the weekend. Even as the Storm Prediction Center's own medium range outlook flags a corridor of severe thunderstorm potential building across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern Iowa and Illinois for this coming Sunday, followed by an upper-level shortwave trough diving into the Great Lakes by Monday. Forecasters in the Milwaukee area have gone further, noting that whatever relief this weekend's storms bring is likely to be short-lived, with warmer temperatures already expected to return to the region by Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. That is not a heat wave ending followed by calm weather. That is smoke, then storms, then renewed heat, cycling through the same region inside a single week. Health officials tracking this pattern have been specific about why the combination, rather than either hazard alone, is what concerns them most. A National Weather Service meteorologist in Minnesota, working directly with communities dealing with both extreme heat and dense smoke simultaneously, noted plainly that those two conditions coinciding with each other is genuinely bad from a health perspective. Since heat stress and fine particulate exposure both strain the cardiovascular and respiratory systems through separate pathways at the same time, compounding risk for older adults, children, and anyone with existing heart or lung conditions, rather than simply adding two mild inconveniences together. Fine particulate pollution from wildfire smoke is specifically linked to shortness of breath, coughing, and aggravated heart and lung disease, and repeated exposure across multiple episodes in a single month carries a cumulative health burden that a single day's air quality reading does not fully capture, a distinction public. Health researchers have been increasingly vocal about as this kind of recurring multi-week smoke pattern has become more common across North America in recent years. The broader atmospheric driver tying this month's heat, smoke, and storm cycle together traces back to the same strengthening El Niño event shaping the entire 2026 season. Warmer, drier conditions across large stretches of Canada's boreal forest this year have primed exactly the kind of drought-stricken landscape that allows lightning-ignited fires to grow quickly and burn for months rather than being contained. Within days, while the same persistent ridging pattern responsible for this year's repeated heat domes has also been what traps that resulting smoke near the surface across the Midwest and Northeast, rather than letting it disperse harmlessly at altitude. Scientists studying Canada's fire seasons in recent years have noted that this specific combination, more fire activity paired with more frequent atmospheric blocking patterns, is what has made cross-border smoke events measurably more common and more severe than they were a decade ago, even though no single fire season or single heat dome can be attributed to any one cause in isolation. It is worth being precise about what can and cannot be said with confidence about the days ahead, because medium-range forecasts carry real uncertainty. Nobody at the Storm Prediction Center or National Weather Service is claiming certainty about exactly how severe this weekend's storms will be, exactly how much smoke will return to any specific city, or exactly when Canada's fire activity will finally ease enough to end this cycle for good. What T forecasters are saying with real confidence is that the underlying ingredients for all three hazards, renewed smoke, severe storms, and a return to warmer temperatures, are already lining up in a similar footprint across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes for the coming week, which is a meaningfully different and more concerning signal than a simple forecast for a quiet, cooling week ahead. There is a practical reason this specific sequence, hazard following hazard rather than hazard followed by calm, tends to catch people off guard even in a month that has already seen so much unusual weather. A dramatic, visibly orange sky draws attention and caution almost automatically. A return to ordinary-looking blue skies, even when an air quality alert remains technically active, tends to make people assume the danger has passed and resume normal outdoor activity. Precisely the moment officials say vigilance actually still matters most. The same pattern applies to the storm risk arriving behind the smoke, since a corridor flagged 4 to 8 days out in a storm prediction center outlook. K receives far less public attention than a same-day severe thunderstorm warning, even though the ingredients behind it, a moist air mass and a diving shortwave trough, are the same combination that produced widespread damaging wind reports earlier this summer. So what does all of this actually mean if you live anywhere across the Midwest, Great Lakes, or Northeast right now? The practical lesson is that clearer skies should not be read as an automatic all clear, especially if an air quality alert covering your area is still technically in effect, since smoke can and has returned to the same cities more than once this month as wind patterns shifted. Keep checking real-time air quality readings rather than relying on how the sky looks, particularly if you're older, have young children, or manage a heart or lung condition, and treat any updated alert with the same seriousness the original hazardous air days received. If you live across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, or Illinois specifically, watch the forecast into this weekend for the severe thunderstorm potential the Storm Prediction Center has already flagged, and do not assume the relief that follows those storms will last, since forecasters are already projecting warmer temperatures returning to parts of the region within days. The honest, grounded summary is this. The heat wave that has dominated the Northeast is genuinely fading right now, but what is replacing it is not simple calm weather. It is a recurring cycle of Canadian wildfire smoke, driven by more than 900 active fires in a domestic wildfire season that has already burned close to 4 million acres. Smoke severe enough that several major metro areas recorded their worst air quality. Readings in over 2 decades earlier this month and are now bracing for renewed alerts. Behind that smoke, the Storm Prediction Center is watching a fresh, severe thunderstorm corridor build across the upper Midwest and Great Lakes for this coming weekend, with warmer temperatures already forecast to return to parts of the region within days after those storms pass. Health officials are specifically concerned about the cumulative effect of heat, smoke, and storm risk cycling through the same communities repeatedly within a single month, a pattern tied to the same strengthening El Niño event and persistent atmospheric blocking that has shaped nearly every major weather story of this entire summer. We are going to keep tracking this exact cycle the way we tracked it today, straight from the National Weather Service, the Storm Prediction Center, and the National Interagency Fire Center, not recycled headlines. Subscribe so you do not miss whether this weekend's storms actually clear the air for good or simply set up the next round of smoke and heat, because based on everything we just walked through, this pattern has not shown any real sign of breaking for good yet. And leave that comment below. Tell me if the sky where you live has cleared and then hazed over again more than once this month, because that repetition is exactly the pattern this entire video has been explaining, and it is worth watching closely even on the days it looks like ordinary blue sky outside. Because behind every one of these smoke and storm maps is a family in Minneapolis who has now sealed their windows against wildfire haze for the 3rd separate time this month. A firefighter somewhere in northern Ontario still working a fire line that has been burning since May, and a family in the upper Midwest about to find out this weekend whether their own break from the smoke lasts any longer than the last one did. 5,000 likes on this one. Let us go. See you in the next one.